As the RCMP Commissioner stated earlier, they have clear and compelling evidence that agents of the Government of India have engaged in and continue to engage in activities that pose a significant threat to public safety. We will never tolerate the involvement of a foreign government threatening and killing Canadian citizens on Canadian soil. Canada fully respects the sovereignty and territorial integrity of India. We expect the Indian government to do the same for Canada. Canada is a country rooted in the rule of law, and the protection of our citizens is paramount. That's why, when our law enforcement and intelligence officials began pursuing credible allegations that agents of the Government of India were directly involved in the killing of a Canadian citizen, Hardeep Singh Nijjar, on Canadian soil, we responded. As the RCMP Commissioner stated earlier, they have clear and compelling evidence that agents of the Government of India have engaged in and continue to engage in activities that pose a significant threat to public safety. This includes clandestine information gathering techniques, coercive behavior targeting South Asian Canadians, and involvement in over a dozen threatening and violent acts, including murder. This is unacceptable. While attempts have been made by the RCMP and national security officials to work with the Government of India and Indian law enforcement counterparts on this matter, they have been repeatedly refused. This is why, this weekend, Canadian officials took an extraordinary step. They met with Indian officials to share RCMP evidence which concluded 6 agents of the Government of India are persons of interest in criminal activities. And despite repeated requests to the Government of India, it has decided not to cooperate. Let me be clear. The evidence brought to light by the RCMP cannot be ignored. It leads to one conclusion. It is necessary to disrupt the criminal activities that continue to pose a threat to public safety in Canada. That is why we acted. Because we will always, first and foremost, stand for the rights of Canadians to feel safe and secure in their own country. We will never tolerate the involvement of a foreign government threatening and killing Canadian citizens on Canadian soil, a deeply unacceptable violation of Canada's sovereignty and of international law. I know the events of the past year and today's revelations have shaken many Canadians, particularly those in the Indo-Canadian and Sikh community. Many of you are angry, upset, frightened. I get that. This shouldn't happen. Canada and India have a long and storied history rooted in people-to-people ties, business and trade. But we cannot abide by what we're seeing right now. Canada fully respects the sovereignty and territorial integrity of India. We expect the Indian government to do the same for Canada. As Prime Minister, it is my responsibility to provide reassurance to those who are feeling their safety has been compromised, but most importantly, it is my responsibility to take action and to never hesitate in doing what is necessary to protect Canadians. That is precisely what we are doing today. I'll now turn it over to Minister Leblanc to provide additional details on these developments. Dominic. When I spoke with Prime Minister Modi at the end of last week, I highlighted how incredibly important the meeting between our national security advisors in Singapore this weekend was going to be. He told me that he was aware of that meeting. I impressed upon him that it needed to be taken very, very seriously. I think it is obvious that the Government of India made a fundamental error in thinking that they could engage in supporting criminal activity against Canadians here on Canadian soil, whether it be murders or extortion or other violent acts. It is absolutely unacceptable for any country, any democracy that upholds the rule of law. That is why we have taken such significant measures, why the RCMP chose to come out today and disrupt the pattern of Indian diplomats collecting through questionable and illegal means information on Canadian citizens that were then fed to criminal organizations that would then take violent actions from extortion to murder against Canadians. No country, particularly not a democracy that upholds the rule of law, can accept this fundamental violation of its sovereignty. Canada fully accepts and respects the sovereignty and the territorial integrity of India. We expect India to do the same. In this case, they did not. As the RCMP Commissioner pointed out this morning, these are ongoing investigations that are already before the courts in some situations and will end up in trials in the coming months in other situations. So what the RCMP can share and the details of this are extremely limited. As those trials unfold, much more will be known. The decision to inform Canadians right now by the RCMP is aimed at keeping Canadians safe, at disrupting this pattern of behavior that these Indian diplomats have been involved in, and ensuring that Canadians can feel safer, knowing that the RCMP is extremely active in these investigations and in following up on these criminal activities. Well, first of all, let's highlight that none of us want to be in this situation. This is not a choice that Canada made to create a chill in Canada-India relations. India is an important democracy, is a country with which we have deep historical people-to-people business ties at a time where the instability around geopolitics mean democracies have to stick together. That is why when we started to understand through intelligence agencies that India was possibly, if not probably, behind Nijjar's killing, the killing of a Canadian on Canadian soil last summer, our first choice, our first actions were to reach out, yes, to our Five Eyes partners, but also to the government of India, to say, we know this has happened. Work with us to fix this. We don't want to be having this fight, but obviously the killing of a Canadian on Canadian soil is not something that we can ignore as a country. So every step of the way, we have apprised India of what we know. I've spoken directly with Prime Minister Modi. We have engaged with intelligence counterparts. And unfortunately, every step of the way, both after I made the statement in the House of Commons last September and till now, the response of the Indian government has been to deny, to obfuscate, to attack me personally and the integrity of the Government of Canada and its officials and its police agencies. And we have simply said, we're going to allow our agencies to do the work, particularly to move from intelligence collection from agencies to police investigations that result in arrests, trials, and consequences within a rigorous and robust and independent judicial system. That has been our approach every step of the way. And indeed, over this past week when the RCMP reached out to its law enforcement counterparts in India, there was a path where we could have worked together to ensure accountability and changes and steps that would have resulted in keeping Canadians safe, because that is our top priority. India, the Indian government, rejected those advances, rejected our attempts to find some way through this. And that brought us to this point of having to disrupt the chain of operations that go from Indian diplomats here in Canada to criminal organizations to direct violent impacts on Canadians right across this country. From the beginning, as of last summer, we've worked closely with our Five Eyes partners, particularly with the United States, where they have gone through similar pattern of behavior from India in regards to an attempted extrajudicial killing. And we will continue to work with our allies as we stand up together for the rule of law. I had many conversations with members of my team and caucus members over the past number of days, and all those conversations were focused on the well-being and the safety of Canadians faced with these significant security concerns and allegations. The safety of Canadians is the number one thing that any government, that any parliamentarians should be preoccupied with, and that is exactly what we're focused on. There will be time to talk about internal party intrigue at another moment, but right now, this government, and indeed all parliamentarians, should be focused on standing up for Canada's sovereignty, standing against interference, and looking to be there to support Canadians in this difficult moment.